What happens when an unstoppable brand of confidence meets a host whose trademark is calm curiosity? Under the red glow of an on-air sign, in a studio that smelled faintly of espresso and rubber mats, Meghan Markle took her seat across from Joe Rogan, ready, it seemed, to reclaim her own narrative. The headphones slipped on, the waveform flared to life, and within minutes, a simple question about influence turned into a precision-cut argument about truth, fame, and ego. The space looked exactly like the screenshots the internet had memorized, mismatched curios. A skull or two in the background, neon lights that hummed faintly, and that stubbornly warm lighting that made everything feel like a late-night kitchen table. Rogan's crew moved like a pit team, quiet, quick, and invisible once their part was done. Joe settled in with the easy posture of a man who'd logged thousands of hours behind a microphone. Meghan arrived 5 minutes before call time, dressed like discipline itself. Cream blazer, clean lines, confidence measured to the millimeter. She shook hands with the producer as if receiving an award. When Joe stepped forward, smiling and relaxed, she met him with a practiced politeness that stopped just short of warmth. "Appreciate you coming," Joe said. "I think we'll have fun." "Fun would be nice," she replied, adjusting her headphones. "I don't get that a lot from interviews." The red light blinked on. Joe began the way he always did, loose, conversational. "All right, friends. Today's guest is someone I've been genuinely curious about. Meghan Markle is here. We're talking influence, responsibility, the media ecosystem, maybe even mushrooms. Who knows?" "Not mushrooms," she said quickly, with a small, airless laugh. Joe chuckled. "Okay, we can keep it elevated." "So," he leaned forward, "when you think about the last few years, what's the most misunderstood thing about you?" "That I need to be understood," she said immediately. "I don't. I'm not a product to decode. The obsession with categorizing me is the problem. People crave simplicity because it's easier than nuance." "Nuance," Joe nodded, "is kind of the whole point of long-form conversation." "Exactly," she said, as though she'd invented the idea. "That's why I'm here, to talk, not to be boxed." "Cool," Joe said lightly. "Then let me ask something people wonder about. When you step into a media moment, and you've stepped into quite a few, how much is messaging, and how much is just you?" "There is no divide," she said, straightening. "I am the message. My existence challenges narratives that were never built to include me." Joe let that hang. It could mean 100 things. "So when critics say some of your interviews feel curated," "Curated is what professionals call prepared," she cut in. "Men get to be prepared. Women get accused of staging." Joe kept his voice steady. "Or maybe people are just picking up on production. Lighting, edits, music cues. That's not gender. That's TV. It becomes gendered when the subject is me," she said evenly. "You should notice that pattern." Through the glass, the waveform on the monitor fluttered like a pulse. "Okay," Joe said, shifting tone. "Let's talk responsibility. You've got a massive platform. When you advocate, say, for mental health, do you ever worry your personal story gets mistaken for universal advice?" "You mean, do I worry that I'm too influential?" "I mean that personal stories can be powerful and also incomplete," Joe clarified. "People can hear them as prescriptions." "That's a framing problem," she replied. "Not a me problem. If someone turns my reality into a universal rule, that's on the listener, or on a media culture that flattens women into tropes." Joe exhaled through his nose, a half sigh. "I don't flatten people. I ask questions. It's kind of my job." "And it's kind of my job," she said sweetly, "to remind you that not every question deserves the dignity of an answer. Sometimes asking is just another way of centering you." The temperature dropped a few degrees. Joe recognized the rhythm, defensive, controlled, strategic. He'd seen it in fighters before a match, comedians mid-spiral, scientists married to their own theories. The trick was to stay open without backing down. "Look," he said, palms open. "I'm not trying to center me. I want to understand you beyond headlines. People tune in because they can smell scripted talking points. They want something human. I'm giving you the human thing," she said coolly. "It just happens to be more disciplined than you're used to." That word again, disciplined, landing like a verdict. Joe tried another route. You talk a lot about agency, he said. What's one decision you've made in the last year that surprised even you? She paused, eyes steady. Deciding to come here, Joe barked a laugh, part disbelief, part relief. The waveform steadied. The conversation, if it could still be called that, had only just begun. Why? Joe asked. Because I knew you'd be charming about it, Meghan said smoothly. You'd say you're just curious, just a guy having conversations. But curiosity without context reenacts harm. It's the friendly face of extraction. Joe blinked. Extraction? You get views. You get clips. You get to say you platform everyone. Meanwhile, I get dissected by people who were never listening in good faith. That's extraction. He felt the air shift, conversation turning into cross-examination. He chose patience. I think people who listen to long-form shows do come in good faith, he said. They stay for hours. That's not hate scrolling, that's attention. Attention is a commodity, she countered. Respect is restraint. If someone gives you terms, you honor them. I am honoring them, Joe said evenly. I'm honoring you by asking you to go deeper than a press release. Her smile edged sharp. No one said you were entitled to depth. Through the glass, a producer looked up. Joe didn't flinch. He'd sparred with zealots, pundits, and fighters who mistook tension for power. He wasn't adding volume, just clarity. Okay, he said carefully. What are the terms you want honored right now? That we don't play the bad faith game, she replied. No insinuations disguised as questions. No, some people say. If you have a point, own it. Fair enough, Joe said. Then here's a direct one. Do you think some of the backlash you've faced has to do with how controlled you seem in high-profile moments? People say they're meeting a brand, not a person. She tilted her chin slightly as if surveying a scene from above. People mistaking composure for calculation isn't my job to fix. If authenticity now means chaos, I'll pass. So your public self is the most authentic version of you? Joe asked. It's the most considerate, she said. Considerate of myself. Boundaries aren't PR, they're mental health. A thoughtful point delivered like a slamming door. Joe nodded anyway. Boundaries are good. I'm just saying, real conversation takes vulnerability. Otherwise, it's a press conference. And yet here you are, she said, confusing vulnerability with access. I'm confusing nothing, he said quietly. I'm asking for something unscripted. I don't do unscripted, she replied, smiling like a blade. I do intentional, silence stretched, elastic, electric, audible in the headphones. Joe broke it with a lighter tone. Intentional's good. Let's be intentional about something practical. Young people look up to you. If a 20-year-old says, I want purpose like yours, what's the first concrete habit you'd tell them to build? Stop asking permission, she said. From parents, bosses, strangers online, especially men with microphones. Joe laughed despite himself. That's a good line. It's not a line, she said. It's instruction. Okay, instruction taken. He leaned in again, voice softening. Second habit? Refuse false choices, she said. I'm tired of being told I have to be either grateful or critical, soft or strong, private or public. I can be both. I am both. That's human, Joe said. But when bothness becomes a shield, when it means I'm both, so I'm beyond critique, people push back. She shook her head. You're projecting. People push back because I won't play the character they wrote for me. And what character do you think I'm asking for? The one who cries on cue, she said. The one who slips and gives you a viral moment. The one who looks small next to your brand of big-hearted masculinity. Joe's eyes softened. I don't want you small. I want you real. Real isn't the property of your audience, she said evenly. Real is mine to define. He glanced toward the red light, still glowing, still steady. He'd seen this before. Guests who came armored, then left lighter. Sometimes it happened because he pushed. Sometimes because he didn't. With Meghan, pushing felt like leaning against glass. You could see everything but never get through. Let me try this, Joe said, palms up. What's the last thing you changed your mind about? She didn't blink. Whether to do this. You changed your mind? I told my team I wouldn't, she said. Then I thought, no. Why yield ground? Why let the narrative play out without me? So I came. As a gift to me? Joe asked. To your listeners, she said. They deserve better examples of women setting terms. He smiled thinly. I think they deserve honest back and forth. And they're getting it, she replied. You're pushing your angle. I'm refusing it. That's the back and forth. He could feel the hour forming its shape, the kind of episode he recognized instantly. The ones where the conversation never quite touched earth. The ones where curiosity felt like confrontation. The ones where the host had to choose, rescue the vibe, or defend the premise. Joe chose the premise. Meghan, he said, voice calm but grounded. I don't invite people here to corner them. I invite them because conversation is one of the last places we can still practice being human together. If every question sounds like an attack, we'll never get anywhere. She folded her hands like a judge delivering a ruling. Then let's get nowhere, beautifully. The waveform spiked, then steadied. Somewhere behind the glass, someone exhaled. Joe rolled his shoulders, feeling that familiar ache of a talk that wanted to turn into theater. He leaned toward the mic with the patience of a man threading a needle in an earthquake. All right, he said. Let's keep going. The second hour began with a reset. Joe adjusted his mic, took a long sip of coffee, and tried to find that easy rhythm his audience loved. Half philosophy, half barbershop banter. Meghan crossed her legs, exuding a kind of poised defiance. During the break, she'd scrolled her phone like someone both editing and archiving her own myth. So, Joe began with a genial smile, we've talked about perception and influence. Let's pivot a bit. You've spoken about mental resilience and self-care. What does that look like for you day to day? Meghan gave a soft laugh, half amused, half dismissive. Joe, it's not a checklist. It's a mindset. You don't wake up and say, time to be resilient. You just are. Sure, Joe said, nodding. But I think a lot of people listening would love something tangible, like how you handle stress. Meditation, journaling, cold plunges, anything? She tilted her head slightly. See, that's the difference between you and me. You want a soundbite. I'm living the experience. I don't have to brand my healing routine. I'm not asking for branding, Joe said. Just something people can connect to. Relatability, she repeated with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That word again. Everyone wants to relate to someone they secretly resent. The flicker of disdain caught the mic like static. Joe inhaled slowly. I think people are curious, not resentful, he said. They want to know how someone under that kind of pressure keeps going. Well, Joe, she said, straightening her blazer, I don't crumble when people underestimate me. That's the difference. Fair, Joe said. But sometimes talking about what grounds you can actually help others. Her tone cooled. I think people should learn to help themselves. He smiled faintly. You don't think you've ever inspired someone? She shrugged. Maybe, but I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not here to babysit the public's emotions. Joe blinked, caught off guard. That's a little cold, isn't it? Honest, she corrected. There's a difference. He chuckled softly. I'm all for honesty, but I still think empathy has a place. Empathy, yes, she said, voice silk over steel, but not emotional labor, especially not for people who've made a career out of dissecting me. You think this conversation is dissection? Joe asked. I think it's veiled intrusion, she replied. Every question assumes there's a version of me you deserve to access. That's not empathy, Joe. That's entitlement. He let the silence stretch. The low hum of the equipment filled the room, just air, electricity, and tension thick enough to taste. Meghan, he said quietly, I've had everyone on this show, scientists, comedians, soldiers, people who've lost everything. Every one of them came here because they wanted to share something real. I'm not entitled to that. I just try to meet people where they are. Exactly, she said. You try. But you can't meet me where I am, Joe. You've never been there. The words landed clean and sharp. Joe leaned back, nodding slowly as if absorbing a blow. You're right, he said finally. I've never been royal. Never had that kind of scrutiny. But I have been misunderstood. I've been called things I'm not. Her smile was thin, almost kind. You chose that spotlight. I was born into it. Yeah, Joe said, voice softening. But you left it. That was a choice, right? Meghan's expression tightened. It was survival. You don't choose to leave toxicity. You escape it. Okay, Joe said gently. But now that you're out, do you ever feel like you've built a new kind of spotlight? One you control, sure, but one that still burns? Her lips parted slightly. You love your metaphors, he grinned. They help people think. They help you dodge accountability, she snapped. There it was, the first flare of real anger. Joe felt the energy shift, sharp as kindling catching flame. Accountability for what? He asked, genuinely puzzled. For the way you platform people, she said. You call it curiosity, but it's spectacle. You've turned conversation into content. Joe tilted his head, studying her across the table, the red light still glowing between them. Steady, silent, and unblinking. That's kind of the definition of a podcast, Joe said, a faint trace of irony in his voice. Meghan exhaled sharply. See? You think that's clever. That's the problem. He kept his tone level, unshakable. No, I think it's honest. Everything's content now. Your posts, my shows, even this moment. The question is whether there's meaning behind it. Meaning doesn't survive mass consumption, she fired back. It becomes noise. You can't monetize authenticity. Joe's lips twitched into a faint smirk. Tell that to your Netflix deal. The air went still. Behind the glass, the producers froze mid-motion. Meghan gave a soft, incredulous laugh. Wow, you really went there. You brought up authenticity, Joe said evenly. All I'm saying is the lines get blurry for everyone, not just you. Her tone dropped to something low and cutting. You think you're the first man to question my integrity? You're not even in the top 10. Joe folded his hands, calm in the storm. I'm not questioning it. I'm exploring it. You're performing it, she snapped. Pretending curiosity isn't just control with better PR. He met her gaze steadily. You think I'm trying to control you? I think you're trying to humanize me on your terms, she said. Which is worse? The silence stretched, thick and electric. Joe had been in tense conversations before, but this one felt different, beyond repair. Meghan wasn't reaching for understanding. She was reinforcing a fortress. He tried once more, gently. I actually think people would love to understand your terms. That's why they listen. They listen because you tell them who to listen to, she replied coldly. You build the arena and sell the tickets. I'm just the show. Joe exhaled through his nose, measured. Then why agree to come here? Her smile curved, equal parts triumph and mockery. To remind the audience that I belong to neither you nor them. Joe looked straight into the camera, jaw tightening slightly. The waveform on the monitor trembled as if sensing the shift. He turned back to her with restrained professionalism. All right, he said. Then let's see if we can still find some truth in all this. Meghan leaned forward, voice dripping with calm defiance. The truth is simple, Joe. I don't owe anyone, especially men with microphones, my vulnerability. Joe nodded once, unshaken. Then maybe this isn't the right place for you. And just like that, the conversation fractured. No explosion, just the quiet, irreversible sound of two worlds closing off from each other. The red on-air light still glowed, but something in the room had gone completely dark. The third segment began in silence, the kind that wasn't accidental. The producer had killed the ambient track, leaving only the soft hum of air conditioning and the faint squeak of Meghan's chair as she crossed her legs again. The tension hadn't dissolved. It had crystallized. Joe leaned toward the mic, voice even, weary. All right, let's reset a little. Meghan, I know you're not a fan of the spectacle, but at its best, this show isn't about that. It's about conversation. You can talk about whatever you want. Let's start there. What do you want to talk about? Meghan didn't look at him. She adjusted her sleeve. You mean you want me to steer the conversation so you can pretend it was always my idea? Joe chuckled quietly. You're a tough guest, you know that? She looked up finally. I'm a woman who refuses to be patronized. I'm not patronizing you, Joe said calmly. I'm just trying to understand why a conversation has to feel like a fight. Because for women like me, she said evenly, every question is a fight. You just don't notice because you've never been on the other end of one. Joe leaned back slightly. I've had plenty of fights, he said. They just usually involve people trying to win arguments, not prove their existence. The line landed. Meghan's expression flickered. Surprise, then disdain. So now I'm proving my existence? She said coolly. That's cute. Joe kept his tone light. I'm saying you don't have to. People already know who you are. Do they? She asked with a hollow laugh. Or do they know who the tabloids told them I am? Who talk shows turned me into? Who men like you dissect for ratings? Joe exhaled slowly, rubbing his thumb against his palm. You came on my show, Meghan, he said gently. I didn't drag you here. I came here, she snapped. To show the world what happens when a woman refuses to be edited. Well, Joe said with a faint grin, so far you're doing a hell of a job proving that. There was humor in his voice, but none in hers. Meghan leaned forward, eyes narrowing. You think that's funny? I think it's ironic, Joe replied evenly. You're here to prove you can't be controlled, but you treat every word like a weapon. Maybe no one's trying to control you. Maybe people are just trying to talk to you. Her smile returned, sharp, deliberate. That's the illusion of men like you, Joe. You call it conversation, but it's always a performance of dominance. Dominance? He repeated. You ask, I answer. You control the framing, the sound, the editing, the reach. You get to define what I meant. That's power. Joe tilted his head slightly. So when I ask a question, it's not curiosity, it's control? Exactly, she said. And when I resist, I'm labeled difficult. He smiled faintly. You said it, not me. Her eyes flashed. So now I'm difficult and defensive. Maybe I should just smile more for your audience, right? Joe lifted his hands in surrender. Hey, I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to have a good faith conversation. And I'm trying, she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm, to have an intelligent one. The on-air light glowed between them like a small, unblinking sun. Joe's voice dropped, steady but firm. You know, Meghan, I've talked to everyone. Astrophysicists, fighters, poets. And not once has anyone called curiosity an attack. That's because they weren't women, she replied. They weren't asked to bleed just to prove they were human. Joe's brows lifted slightly. You really think I'm asking you to bleed? I think you want access, she said. And when I don't give it, you call it arrogance. But it's not. It's boundaries. Joe leaned back, arms folding. Boundaries are healthy. But when every question hits a wall, it stops being a conversation. Maybe that's your problem, she shot back coldly. You think access equals depth. Some of us don't perform vulnerability on demand. He nodded slowly. So this, he gestured around the studio, isn't a conversation. It's a test. It's a mirror, she said. And you don't like what it shows you? A long pause followed, cinematic in its weight. Joe's hand hovered over his coffee mug, his lips pressed thin. He'd seen tempers explode, egos detonate. But Meghan wasn't reacting. She was orchestrating. He took one last shot, calm but human. Okay, he said quietly. If you had one message for the people who still doubt you, what would it be? Meghan relaxed back, finally. I don't need to convince doubters. That's a man's game. I exist beyond doubt. Joe muttered, almost under his breath. Must be peaceful up there. She heard it. You see? That's exactly what I mean. You can't handle confidence in a woman without calling it ego. Joe met her gaze. Confidence is earned, Meghan. Ego demands the room bow first. That cracked the calm. You're unbelievable, she said sharply. Do you even hear yourself? You've interrupted, twisted, patronized, and now you're lecturing me on humility? Joe's tone dropped low, deliberate. I haven't interrupted once, and if you feel misrepresented, maybe it's because the only version of you that feels safe is the one where you're never challenged. Her mouth opened, but for a moment, no sound came. Just anger, pride, shock. You think you're so grounded, don't you? She hissed. The everyman with a mic. The philosopher for gym bros. You think staying calm makes you right? Joe gave a quiet half smile. No, it just keeps me from saying what I'm really thinking. Say it, she dared. He met her stare. I think you mistake resistance for strength." The silence hit like a gunshot. Even the producers froze behind the glass. Meghan blinked twice, then gave a humorless laugh. "Well," she said, "now that's a headline." "Not if you don't make it one," Joe replied. "Oh, don't worry," she said coolly. "I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what happened here." "I'm sure you will," he said, still calm. And with that, the third act of the podcast came to an uneasy close. Joe leaned back, arms crossed. Meghan stared down the table like it was a chessboard she refused to lose. The waveform on the monitor pulsed softly, recording every breath, glare, and ounce of ego between them. Somewhere behind the glass, a producer muttered, "This one's gonna trend." The final minutes felt like a standoff. The on-air lights still burned, but the air had gone stale, too sharp to save. Joe sat forward, voice low but steady. "I think we've covered a lot today. Control, confidence, the press, your boundaries." "And your ego?" Meghan asked, her tone dripping with finality. Joe smirked faintly. "Sure, I've got one. Comes with the mic. But I know when to turn it off." "Oh, that's convenient," she said. "You get to decide when the power dynamic ends," he exhaled. "You really think this is about power?" "It always is," she said. "Especially when a man feels challenged." Joe nodded once. "You're right about one thing. It is a challenge. But not because you're a woman, Meghan. Because you came here treating conversation like interrogation, and then blamed me for asking questions." Meghan let out a soft, mirthless laugh. "You sound like every man who can't handle a woman who doesn't play along." "Maybe," Joe said. "Or maybe I just sound like someone who's tired of pretending arrogance is empowerment." That landed. The silence wasn't just tense, it was final. Joe looked to the control booth. "Cut the feed," the producer hesitated. "You sure?" "Yeah," Joe said quietly, eyes still on Meghan. "We're done here." Meghan leaned back, unbothered, or pretending to be. "Running away already?" "No," Joe said, pushing back his chair. "Ending it before it gets uglier. You came for validation, not conversation." "That's not what I do?" She arched a brow. "So this is how you handle women who won't flatter you?" "This is how I handle guests who mistake hostility for honesty," Joe said, standing. "Show's over." The producer's hand dropped. The on-air light flickered, then went dark. Meghan sat still, her reflection faint in the studio glass, jaw tight, eyes glinting with pride and fury. "You'll regret that," she said finally. Joe smiled faintly. "I doubt it." He walked off set, leaving her alone in the quiet studio, lit only by the fading red glow above her. Outside, the sound engineer murmured, "That one's gonna break the internet." Inside, Meghan straightened her blazer, fixed her hair, and whispered just loud enough for the dead microphones to catch. "They always do." Fade to black. If you enjoyed this tense clash between confidence and composure, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Which side were you on this time? Meghan's or Joe's? Let us know in the comments.